Okay, and if you want to keep track on the progress, what's going on, it shows you everything that is happening in the MATLAB window. So everything you would see just doing a normal SPM pipeline. So it does segment, it does normalize, it does smoothing, and you can keep track of it. I think mine is done. I believe, yes. Preprocessing finished correctly. Output files imported. Anybody not done yet? Am I the slow one? Oh. Are any of yours still working?
Yeah.
Oh. I thought you had the...
I clicked my OK 30 seconds after you did.
So okay. You all right if we... Yes. Go on. Okay. Now that that's done, we have a few new things that are ready here. So click on ROIs to see how it did the segmentation. Okay. So for subject 1, we have the gray matter, we have the white matter, and we have the CSF tissue classes. So that's just for that one subject. If you look at the atlas, this is how it's parcellated. Or sorry, this is the atlas that is going to be applied to that subject later. Right? So it's in that folder. So in the CONN toolbox, ROIs, atlas.nii. This is the Harvard-Oxford atlas. If you wanted to use another one, I forget how to import that. But there is a way to choose another atlas if you're so inclined. Let me put my turn signal on. So if you click on this particular figure, you can see where exactly, let's see, where this mask was. All right, so we got a gray matter mask. Uh-oh, is that an artifact? What is that? Any other guesses? In yellow? Ventricle's right here. What's next to the ventricle? Any subcortical stuff? Yeah, that's what it's trying to mask out. It's not going to do perfect. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of bleed over, but you can start to see things like the global pallidus, putamen, caudate, things like that.
Sorry to back up a little bit. How do you get into that?
Oh, you already done?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you go to ROIs and then click on Atlas and then click on this. Let's see. So you can click on, so if you highlight gray matter, for example, okay, this is the cortical gray matter ribbon that's trying to classify where the gray matter is. So again, it's not going to do perfectly, especially on these functional images, right? They don't have that great of contrast, but it's going to try to get the best mask it can. So look at not only that, but these subcortical structures. There'll be a little bit of bleed into the ventricles. I'm not that concerned with it right now. But take a brief look through that. And same thing for white matter. Again, I don't spend too much time on this, maybe once you get good, maybe 5 minutes per subject. But it should roughly trace out where you think those different tissue types should be. Now, what do we do if this doesn't look good at all? What if we think that it failed completely? Usually I would say that is what I would do to address that is first I would check to make sure that the anatomical image, does the contrast look good? Okay, is that something you can fix at the scanner? If not, I'll give you one recommendation. There's a command in AFNI, 3D unifies, UNIFIZE, 3D unifies. So it's an outside tool, but this helps increase the contrast between gray matter and white matter. 3D unifies, I believe. Let me check. Make sure I'm giving you. Yeah, so it's going to try to normalize the white matter intensity, right? So it's all going to have the same value. So that should be very clearly dissociated from the other tissue types. I'm guessing you're probably not going to run into this problem. I'm just trying to anticipate something that might come up. I haven't needed to use it. Some people, it's mainly used when people don't have a good anatomical scan that's not being parcellated correctly in, say, FreeSurfer. And they're not happy with how FreeSurfer is doing the intensity normalization. They'll do it in that. Okay, same thing for CSF. I'm not going to go through that. We're just going to move along. Should I go into this? We'll get into the networks in a little bit. That's more a first level kind of thing. Okay, almost done with all the setup. I'm getting to denoising. With our rest condition, pretty simple, right? We just have a rest. That's the only condition, technically speaking, that happened in this entire experiment. And later on, you'll see when we do our higher level analysis, right? If, say we had a group of subjects, we want to do a one sample t-test on all the subjects. Not informative at all, really. But you would have this one condition. You would be able to put a contrast weight on it and say, I want to know where the rest condition, like where the time series are, say, significantly correlated, right? Again, for a single group, that's not really going to tell you anything. You're going to see basically everything is significant. But when we get to comparing groups, you compare the rest condition for group 1 versus rest condition for group 2, and then that contrast is more informative. Then you see where there are differences in connectivity between groups. If you are doing something like a task-based experiment, right? You'd want to add a different condition. You would scroll down here. You see a plus. You see a minus sign at the bottom. Click on plus to add new condition. Right? You'd give a condition name like, I don't know, condition 1, for example. And in that case, can I come back to that in a little bit? Just want to make sure we get through the resting state stuff first. But if you don't want a condition, you can just simply delete it. Like that. Okay. And covariates, these are things that are going to be inserted into your first level model. That X matrix I showed a long time ago showed motion regressors, derivatives, different frequencies. So here are the motion plots that we got. And here are 6 sample regressors we would enter into our first level GLM. This QC time series, this is, if I remember correctly, let's see. So these are different options that you have to include. I believe this top one is what the global signal looks like over time, and on the bottom is the frame-wise displacement, right? So different things that have been generated, which you can then use as regressors in your model if you want. And then scrubbing, so any volumes that were detected that should be included as individual regressors. Right, so if this is the entire time series, there's one volume about at the beginning, a couple volumes at the beginning, a few in the middle. In this case, there were 6 total volumes that it scrubbed out. it identified as, being a problem based on their artifact detection toolbox, and are going to be used in the GLM.
So they're being regressed out rather than literally deleted.
Exactly, yeah. The problem with deleting them is you mess up with the temporal autocorrelation and the time series. And that's something that's necessary to estimate when you're trying to figure out how many degrees of freedom there are in the data. Right? So every time point isn't independent from each other. But you can calculate what the effective number of degrees of freedom is by estimating how correlated the time points are. Okay, so at that point, we've done all the pre-processing. Click on Done. Which will bring up this setup pipeline. This is going to allow you to do a few different things here. So ROI to ROI, we had that Harvard-Oxford Atlas. So each ROI, think of that as a node. It's going to be doing connectivity from each node to each node, from each ROI to each voxel, Seed-to-voxel, and then each voxel to each voxel to generate those correlation matrices we talked about earlier. A couple other options: you can overwrite the existing results, local processing. Yeah, if you have a cluster or something, let me know. And there's some other options. But anyway, I'm going to click Start. That's all good.
Does CONN toolbox automatically parallelize processing-wise? I mean, 4 cores.
Yeah.
4 of them.
I don't know. I know that in AFNI you have to specify that if you want to. I'm not sure what CONN does. It seems to run pretty fast, so I think it's.
So would you have a cluster? Do you want to put the script?
Yeah. If you had a lot of subjects. For this sample thing, we have 25 subjects. My computer takes a little over 2 hours, which is why I'm going to recommend that people do that overnight. If it doesn't work, that's fine. You can just get it off my hard drive. Could you repeat that one more time? The documents? Yeah, they have the documentation on their website. Yeah, it's like a 30-page manual. It's not too bad.
I looked at SPM, they're like 508.
Yeah. No, don't want that. Okay. Few moments. Everybody here? Anybody not here? No?
My laptop is epically slow.
Really?
I don't know. It's new. It's
Oh. Okay.
So I did miss how you launched this phase here.
Oh, I just clicked on in setup. Yeah, I can go back and forth between these. On setup, I just clicked done. On the lower left. Yeah. So it'll take you a few minutes, but I'll go on. Yeah, notice you can go between any of those tabs anytime you want. It's going to save everything, so you'll be fine. And if you're paranoid, you want to make sure everything is being saved, just go to Project, Save, and it's going to save out a mat file, which you can then obviously load back up by clicking Project Open. All right. So it lists what it is going to do for the denoising, gives you a little preview what's happening here. Do you remember a NAT comp core when I was talking about, identifies components in, say, CSF white matter and removes those from the data? So it gives you a list of confounds it's going to include as part of its denoising procedure. So there's white matter. These are some time series, some independent orthogonal time series that it's extracted from these tissue types. So from the white matter and from the CSF. I mean, just looking at those, it's not really going to tell you anything. But these are the 5 regressors, the 5 components in each tissue type it's going to be using. Many of these defaults I don't change. So things like temporal expansion, polynomial expansion, I couldn't even really tell you what they do, to be honest. So I leave them alone. That's some more technical stuff I'm not that familiar with. Realignment. So these are the parameters from earlier, right? These are the motion regressors, and also, what are the next 6? Those are the first 6, yeah. But then we have an additional. Derivatives, yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, you have an option here.
Okay.
Well, you just opened a can of worms.
Okay.
So you can have first order. You can also add second order derivatives.
Okay.
Yeah. Depends what you want. For the purposes of this, choose whatever you want. Really, I mean, I'm not going to stop you. You can choose anything. But yeah, this is going to add 12 regressors. If you added a higher derivative, you can certainly do so. Let's see, scrubbing. So these are the volumes we are removing. And effective rest, this wasn't super clear to me, but I think this is simply to account for kind of getting in the resting state zone, for example. Like you start the experiment. This may be not completely valid, but some people recommend including it, almost as though it's kind of like the onset of the condition and you're trying to account for it with a couple additional regressors. So as you can see, they add a lot of things. You can remove any of these by simply clicking on this arrow here. So I highlight what I want to remove. I click on it. It's out. If I want to add any of these things back in, I can certainly do so. Right? So notice here, we have that QC time series. Right? If you remember from before, that included global signal. Do you want global signal? It's okay if you, I'm not going to shoot you down if you say yes, but you can include it. Do you want it? Do you want global signal? Okay, so there's so much crazy stuff in here that you can add. I think these are the time series of each of the different Atlas places, but why would you do that? Yeah. You could regress out basically all your effects in gray matter. I mean, it gives you the option to. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could.
Do you regress out lesion variants?
Regress out what?
Lesion variants and stuff?
Yeah, maybe that's where this would come in. I'm not sure.
Capture some.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to look into that. I don't know about that. Okay. Does this make sense? So, at the setup, we generated a bunch of things that we could potentially use as covariates and as ways to denoise the data. But it's up to you which ones you want to include. These are the defaults that it uses. Again, those ANAT, comp core components as well as realignment and any volumes that it's scrubbing. Bandpass filter. This is interesting. Again, like I said, Alfonso, at least in his own words, he said, yeah, there's the default, but I usually don't include that low pass filter. Up to you. Up to you. You know, read some papers, make your own judgment. I don't usually include it, right? This high pass filter of 0.008 seems to be pretty good for regressing out any really slow drifts, any slow signals that may contaminate the data. And then, just to make things a little bit more confusing, remember when I was talking about Linguist? Doing everything in a model or separately? Well, here's where the rubber meets the road, because you can do all this, you can do the bandpass filtering after regression, or you can include it as part of your model. Similar to what I showed when if that AFNI X matrix. Now, these graphs, how do we interpret them? And this is giving you a preview of what the distribution of correlation values is going to look like. Before, in gray, and after, in yellow, we apply these steps. Remember I was talking about global signal regression, why some people think that it introduces spurious negative correlations. Well, in this case, we're not including global signal in our model, right? That was that QC time series thing that we could include. We're just using components from different tissue types. We're using scrubbing and realignment parameters. And even in that case, it seems like the distribution of correlations is pretty much centered at 0. It's not forcing it to do that. Okay, and if you do this across a bunch of subjects, they're not all going to look the same. But the point is, before you do any of this denoising and cleaning up your data, there is almost always a strong positive skew to the right. So we're trying to ameliorate that. And this plot is just another way of showing you what that looks like. So these are carpet plots. It should look like smooth carpet after everything has been denoised, hence the name. And the global signal also seems to be evened out after all this has been applied. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
So the previews on the right, those are updated in real time as you add things on the web?
Yeah, I believe so. So if, for example, I removed CSF, yeah, it changes a little bit. It's also applying the bandpass filter, though. It's applying a couple other things.
So maybe I missed this, but can you tell if it's getting better?
It changes, but it just.
Yeah.
Just based on the appearance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering what else was really in there. Yeah, interesting.
The original might also refer to everything before any preprocessing has been applied,
Okay.
now that I think about it. Yeah. All right. Okay. Any other questions before we go on? Denoise. Oh, I should I cover this? If you're training a lab manager or an RA, you may also want them to generate these QA plots, which this is in this QA plots button down below. It brings up this window. Nothing too crazy. I'm just going to blow through this. Basically, everything that we've been showing here you can then use to generate these QC plots. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if you want a record of what happened, you would just generate the QC plots. So things like how was the normalization, how was all this new stuff.
This is just for the preprocessing.
Yeah. I'm just going to stop it. If you're doing it, stop it, because it's going to take too long. I just clicked on stop. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so if we're good to go, click on done. And this denoising is going to be applied again to all these different analyses we can do, all subjects, all conditions. All that looks good. Click on start. I'm sorry, Parker.
Now it's freaking out. It's like, click stop.
What I'm going to show you after this, we'll see the first level analysis. We'll get everything set up for the whole group analysis. And as it's running on your machines, I'll give you a preview of what those second level results look like, because I already have it analyzed on my machine. All right. So what CONN does, it doesn't do every possible group level analysis automatically. You need to specify which ones you want to do at the second level. But we have a few different options here. We have Seed-to-voxel, we have voxel-to-voxel, and we have dynamic ICA circuits. Right? We cover most of these tomorrow. For now, I just want to focus on Seed-to-voxel and ROI to ROI. Yeah. Yeah, question? Oh, so for denoising, all I did once I really didn't change anything substantially. I just clicked on done, and it takes maybe 2 minutes. Oh yeah, then I click on analyses, first level. Okay. Again, it gives you a preview of what's going to happen once you do this. We have 164 nodes from this atlas. That's these parcellations. And we can do a few different analysis types. You click on this window, you see your options here. So functional connectivity is your basic correlation. You can do a GPPI if you set up the conditions earlier. Those are the two main ones. Dynamic ICA, we'll actually cover that on day 2. It's pretty interesting, but you do need a big effect size to find anything there. If you're doing a basic correlation analysis under href weighting, if you click on that window, click on no weighting. It's going to be looking for contrast and conditions you set up before, but just set it to no weighting so it just does a straight connectivity analysis, doesn't try to weight it by anything. Now within this preview, you can see what the seed-to-voxel analysis looks like for each of these different parcellations. Yeah. So highlight, for example, Atlas ICR, so right insular cortex. Yeah. I'm looking at some random slice that was generated here. Now, if I were to scroll through this, where do you think I would see the most connectivity for this seed? What? You see it there too. But let's see if you're right. Close. Yeah, left is on the left. It's going to be most intense for whatever the seed was, because it's correlated with itself. It's going to be the highest there. So that's just a check to see, that at minimum that correlation should pick up itself, or else something is wrong. But also with the insula, you do see usually strong correlation between the two sides, right? If I were to look at something associated with default mode network, does anybody want to scroll through, take a guess at which of these nodes would probably be correlated with that specific network? Precuneus, ACC, PCC? Okay. PCC sounds good to me. That rhymes. Let's see here. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly where it is. I'd have to go back to the atlas.
Can you enlarge that window?
I can't, sorry.
No, I mean, can one.
Oh, on your machine?
Yeah, this is teeny.
It is teeny.
164.
There's a networks.default mode.pcc.
There you go.
Say that again?
If you, yeah.
Networks.default mode.pcc.
Yeah. Yep. So if you scroll through the slices, you should see that classic pattern. So it should be more active in the front and also in the posterior.
So Andy, the blue regions are anti-correlated.
That's right. Yeah. This hasn't been corrected, so you'll see stuff floating around in white matter ventricles. But we'll correct for it later. You can change the threshold rate here if you want to say 0.4 to clean it up. I know default mode is pretty strong, so I should only be seeing that. Yeah. Seems to work, right? First glance. Yeah. Right, yeah. This actually works. Okay. All right, so I'm happy with this. This is seed. It'll do both seed-to-voxel and ROI to ROI. So every node to every other node. Click on Done. Click Start.
Select only the ones that you want.
Yeah. Oh, I should have shown that. Yeah. I'll go back to that in a little bit. Yeah, the question was, can you only select a subset of ROIs? And yeah, you absolutely can. Sometimes when I'm playing around with it, I just like to select the networks, just the networks. And then, you can look at a restricted region of that. Yeah, so obviously, for single subject, there's no way we can do a group level analysis. That's fine. But just to show you what the options would look like. Oh, I should have pointed out, so that analysis, that preview, was actually the single subject analyzed. Clicking Done was to do the second level results.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which obviously doesn't make sense with one subject, but here's what the menu looks like. So what you would see, this is now a template brain. It would take all of your subjects that you had listed, and then at each voxel, it would convert that correlation value to a z-statistic, and it would do a t-test on it. So you'd be seeing significant correlations.
Just to be clear, you would only be doing like a seed-to-voxel or ROI to ROI and ICA and so on. Like you wouldn't. Okay.
No,
Would
sorry.
you be running on the left hand, like on the left
Yeah,
hand,
yeah.
and seed-to-voxel,
Yep.
and the ICA networks and whatnot? Like you would only do them independently. Like you wouldn't.
All at the same time?
Well, not necessarily all, but yeah, basically.
Yeah. The way they kind of set up, you do seed-to-voxel and ROI to ROI as a single analysis, like group level analysis. Same thing for voxel and ICA, and then dynamic ICA is also its separate.
And this depends
Thing.
on kind of what, I know you said you're going to talk about ICA networks tomorrow, but this depends on what you're trying to look for in your data, or?
Yeah, it could, yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, this will be more informative when I pull up an actual group level result, but you'll see these different nodes on a template brain. And when we do a valid group level analysis, you'll be seeing which ones are significantly connected to the other nodes. So they're all there. I just clicked on ROI to ROI. And then on seed sources, I'm just selecting random ones to see how the node moves around. Okay. So those are the basics of the pre-processing about the Q&A. Now I'm going to have everybody do just to get things started, do the group level analysis.